Thank you so much to our panelists of that last discussion. Now we want to talk about celebrating resilience and courage. And we're going to hear from activists and experts not only in human rights, but also in social justice. They're going to share some really inspiring stories and lessons on effective activism, on community organizing, and advocacy. Please welcome to the stage Laurie Adams, CEO for Women to Women International, and our panel.
Hello, everybody. At Women for Women International, we work with women survivors of war. And so we know that standing up for what you believe in sometimes means that you have to risk everything. Your reputation, your family, your livelihoods. And I could not be prouder, therefore, to be as part of this panel and to be with these two incredible advocates for change and making the link between the struggle for freedom here in the United States and that one internationally. So I'm going to just do a very brief introduction because then I want the panelists to share with you what's meaningful to them about their lives and what inspires them. But I'll start with Desmond. When I found out I got to be on a panel with Desmond, I was so fangirling. I was like, this is a man that does the most incredible work that I think is so important in the United States, confronting hundreds of years of racial injustice and working for change across Florida and the nation. He's been recognized. There's so many, we'd be here for the whole 20 minutes recognizing, but for example, his organization was nominated for a Nobel Prize. He's one of Time's top 100. He's a MacArthur Genius Fellow. But what strikes me is that in 2018, he got voting rights for 1.4 million Floridians. And I think that's just one tiny example of what he's achieved with his life. So I'll come back to Desmond, but first I want to say something about Ishrat Jahan. She has lived all over the world, but has come back to the US, and she's working on anti-trafficking in the United States, Cambodia, and India. That, of course, is connects with the work that we do at Women for Women, and trying to get the private sector and government and the public to be interested in some of the most marginalized people in the world and take the actions that's necessary certainly takes both courage and resilience. So starting with you, Ishrat, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, but also what inspires you to do this work?
Thank you, and it's a privilege to be on this panel with both of you. You know, it started very young when I started traveling and I was living abroad. I lived abroad for about 12 years, and it's the resiliency of women with less privilege, less access than what I was given. It's the story of my mother who was raised in a privileged household, but still married off at an early age when she was barely 15 and not able to get further education. It's a story of when I arrived in Bangladesh to visit with my family, they decided that I needed a helper. And it was a young girl, just 2 years younger than me, didn't know what was happening to her, showed up at my doorstep in front of my room crying, saying, "I'm here." I didn't know what to do with that. And to work with her to figure out what is it that she wanted to do and with her life and give her that support. It's a story of today that I work with NOMI Network. Every day, the resilience that I see, I work with women in the most poverty-stricken areas where there's limited access to economy, limited access to information, and just access in general. Girls are not allowed to go to school. Women are not allowed outside of the home. And how do you work with that? Their resiliency, the strength. One girl what was in our program, she is now an advocate for the entire young girls population in her community. Just because through our program, our trainings, she learned how to have a voice. She learned how to have access to her rights. And that's inspirational because she was a girl that she was super shy, stayed in her room. Father wasn't going to allow her to participate in education, come to the program. The mother stood up and said, "No, I'm not going to get her married off. She will enter." So the mother and the daughter, every day, these stories inspire me. The woman who couldn't do anything, husband left her with 2 children to look after by herself. All she knew how to do was make jewelry, but had no capital, had no funding, had no market. Through our program, she learned how to have resiliency, how to manage her time and the business skills and seed fund to get started. And now she is the provider of jewelry for many occasions throughout her community. And she's identified what her market is and able to support other women and train other women to join her in business ventures. These stories inspire me every day to keep going.
Thank you. And they've inspired us as well. Thank you. So Desmond, tell us about you and what inspires you.
Wow. So first of all, I am honored to be on this stage as well and in front of this beautiful audience. You know, in August 2005, I stood in front of railroad tracks waiting on a train to come so I can jump in front of it. You know, that day that I stood there, I was a broken man. I was at my lowest, didn't have any hope, self-esteem, and I was ready to end my life. But, you know, the universe had other plans, and that train never came, and I ended up crossing those tracks. And I checked myself into a substance abuse treatment facility. And after completing that, moved into a homeless shelter. And from there, I enrolled in a local college. And one thing led to the next. And eventually, a few years later, I was able to obtain a law degree from FIU College of Law. And in that process, in that transformation, I discovered the joy of giving back. I just discovered my purpose. And it was so simple. It was understanding that no matter what situation I was in or, you know, what title or I'd had or didn't have, that there was always someone worse off that I could be of help to. And then later on in my journey, I discovered that there were people that were better off than me that needed my help too as well. But, you know, I formed this organization, and Laurie, as you said, that we were able to restore voting rights to 1.4 million people with felony convictions. And eventually this year we was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by the same organization who nominated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I think that, and I know so many organizations and so many directly impacted people that are deserving of this recognition, but I think that this came about because it was the universe just validating what we were doing. And it was so easy to just talk about, you know, democracy and restoring voting rights and giving access to democracy. And what did that mean for our communities? But I think what we're engaging was something so much deeper, right? And you talk about like resilience, we talk about courage, especially courage. You know, one of the things that we discovered, and it really gave me so much joy, is really discovering about how there is an appetite to be courageous enough to truly love people, right? Now, we use the word love a lot, and it's easy to love someone who confers a benefit to you, right? It makes you feel good. That's easy to say, I love you. But I think that true testament of love is being able to love people that may despise you, or may want to see harm come to you, and how we can overcome those obstacles to be able to see the humanity even in our enemies, right? And figuring that, man, wait a minute, if we can get the world to love someone who they most despise. And in so many cases, it's that person that committed a criminal act that was convicted and are in prison, right? Because so many barriers are just shut out from these individuals. But figuring that if we can get the world to see the humanity in people who make mistakes, people who are incarcerated, if we can get the world to love them, then the world is capable of loving anyone. And that is something that gets me excited and motivated and wakes me up every day, because what I realize in this journey, that what I'm actually doing is not creating a will, and I'm not being Don Quixote on some masterful journey. But what I'm rather doing is engaging in a process that allows the world to tap into what's already inside of each and every one of us, right? That in spite of what we see in this world and the division, the hatred, you know, the tribalisms, that deep down inside in each and every one of us is a desire to love and be loved. Deep down inside of us is a desire, right, to connect to something bigger than ourselves, right? And we see it every time that there's a natural disaster, every single time. Right? If there's an accident on the road and you come across an accident, there's someone laying on the ground and you decide to stop your car and get out and help. When you run to that person, your first question is not going to be, did you vote for Donald Trump? right? It's not gonna be what's your sexual identity. It's not gonna be what's your immigration status, right? It's none of that matters in the moment of calamity. When the condo collapsed in Surfside, people were going through the rubber, not worrying about people's politics or sexual identity or statuses. What they instantly was engaged in was a connectivity along the lines of humanity. And so when you run across that person, your first question is going to be, are you okay? Or how can I help? It's in those moments that society is beautiful. It's in those moments that our communities are great. And I believe that we don't have to wait for disasters to happen to naturally do things that are naturally inside of us, which is look at each other, recognize each other's humanity, and fight for a world in which every person is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of what their prior situations are. And I think that with the work that we're doing with returning citizens or people who've been impacted by the criminal justice system, man, we see an ability to bring the world together. We see an ability to bring people that was seemingly believing that they were irreconcilable differences among them to actually find out that there's more that binds us together than there is that actually separates us.
That's beautiful. I think one of the things that strikes me, what connects our work, is that the populations we work with are so stigmatized. So you've talked about people who've been in prison have been stigmatized. Certainly women who've been trafficked are stigmatized by their own families. We work with women whose families reject them after they've been sexually violated. And at Women for Women, we spend an enormous amount of time showing that women have power. People who've been marginalized by others. And that's why this week we've launched a campaign that is called She Dares. She dares to stand up and take risks to rebuild her life. What will you do? And that leads me to a question, because I want to get a bit practical here. So you've spoken really compellingly, Desmond. I'm going to start with you, and we only have like 8 minutes left, so we're going to keep it brief. But what investments can be made in people to get this courage and resilience? You said that train didn't come, that's what helped you, but what specific investments do you make such that people who have been stigmatized can claim their power?
Wow. So the immediate answer is recognizing that there are people, right? So many times we use words and labels to describe folks. You know, you've heard the term ex-con, ex-felon, all kinds of, illegal this, illegal that. And I think that what those terms do in two things, that they dehumanize that individual, and they also desensitize us to their humanity. And so the first thing that we have to recognize is the humanity in someone. I think that is so important. And then understanding that there's been a saying that's been going around for many years. Those that are closest to the pain are often the ones that are closest to the solution. Yes. Right? And so they have to be a significant investment in those individuals who are closest to the pain, and intentionality as how are you engaging to strengthen them, right? Understanding that just like a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, you can have 10 links and 9 of them could hold 1,000 pounds. But if that one link could only hold 10 pounds, then that's the total amount of weight that chain is going to be able to bear, that 10 pounds. No matter how much stronger you make the other 9 links, until you strengthen that 10th link, right, then that's all you're gonna be able to carry. And so it's a win-win-win situation, right? Understanding that, let's strengthen those individuals in our society that's been weakened by systems of oppression, discrimination, and a narrative that said that their lives are not as valuable as anyone else's, right? We do that, the world is ours. The world is ours.
Fantastic, thank you. And Ishrat, what would you say? What are the investments that you make?
So I'll piggyback on that and say at the ground level, I think there's a lot of investment made to say we need to alleviate poverty, and this is how we're going to do it. We need to address this particular issue for women's rights, and this is how we're going to do it. But again, coming back to what are their individual barriers? Are we addressing that? In our U.S. program, we work with girls that are incarcerated because they've been put in place because of their victims of trafficking. They didn't unknowingly are victimized by it. But how do we ensure that they're going back into a system that's going to work for them? in India and in Cambodia, there are communities that don't know what are basic human rights. They don't understand what is social emotional learning needs. They don't understand how to communicate. They don't know what it is that they need to move forward in life, how to generate income. Now, investing takes time. To develop that takes time, and we have to go deeper and build and invest a longer period. Our interventions end up being almost a 2-year intervention at an individual level, because we know a light touch on just educating them on how to run a sewing machine and they're a victim and giving some trauma-informed counseling is not going to put them on the right path. Once they get the job, we help them find the job, we help them find an activity that's going to give them income. What happens after that? They need the counseling. They need a network of support. They need someone that's going to believe in them, build their confidence so they can have a sustainable future and make informed decisions about their future. Those processes are missing. I think there's a lot of investment from the private sector or from donors to say, we need to see scale, we need to see this duplicated, we need to see numbers and volume. But what I see from our work is we need to get deeper. We need to invest more time, give them enough time to actually go the full length to make sure that they're getting to the end goal and that it's sustainable at a real level. Just giving them a degree, just like you, just handing you a degree is not enough. You have to go through the internship. You have to go through the experience to have a path for yourself to learn and see that what lies ahead. If you don't give that to those people that had never access to that, didn't even know, how are you going to build a community that's going to thrive? How are you going to create advocates that's going to advocate for themselves? So our program ensures that there's leaders within those communities, women that have a voice. They're able to go around and say, this is what it means for us to work at home and also generate an income. We can do both, and this is how we're going to do it. We've given them those tools and those resources. The call to action for us is from the private sector. Do you have enough spaces to employ women with limited to no skills, limited to no education, if we commit to giving them the skills to meet the gap? Are you willing to hire them and create a space where they are counseled, they are understood, heard, and advocated for within your organizations? We provide the training for it. Are you willing to meet us at the table? I think that's where we need to invest in to make sure women truly receive the support that they need and have the hope to continue and grow in the future.
Can I add to that? I mean, like we're feeding off each other, right? Because I think in addition to all that, and you're so much on point, it's also giving people the space to fail.
Yes.
Right. So many times we expect perfection coming from the people who've been most impacted by the pain, while we ourselves are not perfect. And one of the things that I've seen even in all genres of art is that, man, the masterpieces that we see, right? The one thing they have in common is that the artists had the courage to paint outside the lines. Right? And that's what creates that masterpiece. But if we're going to be so rigid and not give a person room to fail, then they won't create something that's masterful. I would not have been able to do the work that I've done if I wasn't given that room to make a mistake, right? To maybe even be wrong. But understanding that the people, they understood that it was a difference between commitment and contribution. And really understanding what role do we play in that ecosystem, right? Because it changes depending on the ecosystem. Quick way for you guys to understand the difference between commitment and contribution is think about the ham and cheese omelet. I just had breakfast this morning. I know that ham and cheese omelet, there are eggs, ham, cheese, and milk that goes into that. I use the milk because I stretch the eggs with the milk, right? But we know that the milk and the cheese come from the cow. We know that the eggs come from the chicken and the ham come from the pig. Well, the cow made a contribution to the ham and cheese omelet, right? The chicken made a contribution to the ham and cheese omelet. The pig made a commitment to the ham and cheese omelet. And that's the difference. And you have to understand that we need all three to have a delicious ham and cheese omelet. But what's key is you have to know what role you play. You cannot be the chicken or the cow and try to play the role of the pig, right? Because you're not necessarily committed to this. You're just wanting to contribute to that. A lot of times that pig is that person who is closest to the pain, and we have to understand that and make sure that we support them through strong contributions, but understand that the commitment. They're the ones whose lives hang in the balance, and we have to give them that flexibility to even make a mistake and stumbles at times.
Absolutely. Completely.
That is hard to follow, but would you like to have a closing word?
My thing is, at NOMI Network, we've given that a go. We've said you can fail. We give our women, they're survivors. We know they're going to fail. They're women that are coming from extreme poverty. We know first time is not going to work. We give them opportunities. We stay with them until we get them on their own feet. What drives us is compassion. And that's different from sympathy and empathy.
Yep.
It's a conversation we had this morning with our teams. Compassion brings you to the door and have you show up and say, how do I help you today? How can I get you, walk with you? Yep. It's not just about listening and saying, yes, we can support you. It's about showing up, being there and being a partner, a true partner that's going to leverage what your resources are and make sure that the success is there. So I would say have compassion. How do you deliver on compassion? We can help guide that.
I think I just want to echo two messages that came out that I think are really important. One of them is this last one, and Women for Women, we talk about this all the time. We don't like talking about helping people or empowering people. I believe that what we're doing is we're investing in people's own power to be change makers, because, as Desmond said so beautifully, it's people who are living at the front lines that understand what needs to change. And our role is to invest in them and support them and validate them. And I think that's really important. But the other one I want to say, because I know there are a lot of investors in the room, at Women for Women, people love the fact that we triple the income of women in our program. Over 500,000 women come through, they triple. And that is important. But what is really important is that women believe in themselves.
Yes.
And if you don't
Absolutely.
do the trauma healing, and if you don't do the connections for support, if you don't bring together, so I am thrilled that we are scaling through apps, et cetera, but it is human connection that heals. And there has to be face-to-face support, and we can't scale it all through apps. We have to invest in that deeper connection. And both of you do that so beautifully. You have spoken about it so beautifully. Thank you for taking the time, and thank you all for listening. Our time is unfortunately up, but I'm going to go watch these guys on YouTube and listen some more.
Thank you so much.
And she makes a good point. If there is any conversation that you have missed, Concordia does have their YouTube page, and you can find those conversations there. They are recorded and posted. I want to, and also I loved that omelet analogy. That was awesome. I want to, before we go to break, bring up a quick poll question, and would love your participation in this. The question is, which of the following do you believe is the most crucial aspect of promoting gender equity in cities like New York? Not just New York, but many other cities like New York. Which of the following do you believe is the most crucial aspect of promoting gender equity in cities like New York? Comprehensive healthcare access, innovation for economic empowerment, accessible housing, or is it something else? None of the above. So those are our questions. And if you are not on pigeonhole.at, that's where you can find these polls, and you can participate on your smartphone or any other tablet or laptop. Again, which of the following do you believe is the most crucial aspect of promoting gender equity in cities like New York? And we love to hear from the audience, so that you have a say in this too. So we've got one participant, or three participants, I think, and innovation for economic empowerment seems to be the answer for those who participated. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to take a quick break for lunch, and we'll be back at 12:30. So please join us back here at 12:30. Thanks so much.